So I just want to restate our scripture reading. Romans 8:28. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, and to them who are the called according to his purpose. This is such a promise, and I don't know if we really take the time to look at all the promises and really think about what they mean. But this promise means a lot to me in my life. I just want to start out with a little story. It was an early morning in July many years ago. A little boy named Jacob Joseph Staggs Wright was born in Salem, Oregon. He was a healthy boy, and he went back with his parents to start out his life. But when he was 11 months old, he was taken away to no longer live with his parents. We'll pick up the story in a little bit. But this morning, I want to talk a little bit about the life of Joseph and the lessons that we can take away from it. So, let's start with Joseph. We all know the story of Joseph, but I just want to talk about when he was taken away from his home. Sorry, I'm still trying to get used to this here. So let's start with Genesis 37, 3 through 22. I'll give you all a minute to turn there if you want to. And we read, Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was a son of his old age. And he made him a coat of many colors. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, let me see if I can get this a little bit up closer. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him and could not speak peaceably unto him. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And when he said unto them, Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves stood round about, and made obeisance to my sheaf. And his brethren said unto him, Shalt thou indeed reign over us? Or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it his brethren, and said, Behold, I have dreamed a dream more, and behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. And he told it his father and to his brethren, and his father rebuked him, and said unto him, What is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and my mother, thy mother, and thy brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to thee to the earth? And his brethren envied him, but his father observed the saying. And his brethren went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. And Israel said unto Joseph, Do not thy brethren feed the flock in Shechem? And he said to him, Go, I pray thee, and see whether it be well with thy brethren and with the flocks, and bring me word again. So he sent him out of the house, sent him out of the vale of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a certain man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field. And the man asked him, saying, What seekest thou? And he said, I seek my brethren. Tell me, I pray thee, where they feed their flocks. And the man said, They are departed hence. For I heard them say, Let us go to Dothan. And Joseph went after his brethren, and found them in Dothan. And when they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him. And they said one to another, Behold, this dreamer cometh. Come now, therefore, and let us slay him, and cast him into some pit, and we will say, Some evil beast hath devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. And Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands, and said, Let us not kill him. And Reuben said unto them, Shed no blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that he might rid him out of their hands, to deliver him to his father again. So, from this passage of Scripture, we see that Joseph met with some unfortunate circumstances. But how does Joseph handle this situation? Unfortunately, the Bible does not give us a lot of the details of this, But we do have more inspiration and detail from Ellen White. So I'm going to read some from Patriarchs and Prophets that give us some insight on that. This is from Patriarchs and Prophets, page 213, paragraph 1. Meanwhile, Joseph with his captors was on the way to Egypt. As the caravan journeyed southward toward his borders of Canaan, the boy could discern in the distance the hills among which his father's tents lay. Bitterly he wept at the thought of that loving father in his loneliness and affliction. Again, the scene at Dothan came up before him. He saw his angry brethren and felt the fierce glances bent upon him. The stinging, insulting words that had met his agonized entreaties were ringing in his ears. With a trembling heart, he looked toward to the future. What a change in situation. From the tenderly cherished son to the despised and helpless slave. Alone and friendless, what would be his lot in the strange land to which he was going? For a time, Joseph gave himself up to uncontrolled grief and terror. But in the providence of God, even this experience was to be a blessing to him. He had learned in just a few hours that which years might not otherwise have taught him. His father, strong and tender as his love had been, had done him wrong by his partiality and indulgence. This unwise preference had angered his brethren and provoked them to the cruel deed. But they had provoked them to the cruel deed that had separated him from his home. Its effects were manifest also in his own character. Faith had been encouraged, faults had been encouraged that were now to be corrected. He was becoming self-sufficient and exacting. Accustomed to the tenderness of his father's care, he felt that he was unprepared to cope with the difficulties before him in the bitter, uncared-for life of a stranger and slave. Then his thoughts turned toward his father's God. In his childhood, he had been taught to love and fear him. Often in his father's tent, he had listened to the stories of the visions that Jacob saw as he had fled from his home, an exile and a fugitive. He had been told of the Lord's promise to Jacob and how they had been fulfilled, how in the hour of need the angels of God had come to instruct, comfort, and protect him. And he had learned of the love of God in providing for men a Redeemer. Now all these precious lessons came vividly before him. Joseph believed that the God of his fathers would be his God. He then and there gave himself fully to the Lord, and he prayed that the keeper of Israel would be with him in the land of his exile. His soul thrilled with the high resolve to prove himself true to God, under all circumstances to act as became a subject of the King of Heaven. He would serve the Lord with undivided heart. He would meet the trials of his lot with fortitude and perform every duty with fidelity. One day's experience had been in the turning point to Joseph's life. Its terrible calamity had transformed him from a petted child to a man, thoughtful, courageous, and self-possessed. So I just want to take a few minutes to look here how Joseph handled this situation. So how did Joseph handle himself? We can set himself up to uncontrolled grief and terror. Just taking, if you think about that, not only was he taken away from his family, but his family didn't like him, especially his brothers. His dad and his younger brother did. But can you just imagine, if you take a minute to think about it, what it would feel like if your brothers and sisters didn't like you and they wanted you dead? That's what Joseph was feeling. And he gave himself up to uncontrolled grief and terror. I think we would all agree that it was a natural reaction for him. To be torn away from your family is a huge thing. But what he does with that grief and that terror is the key, though. So what did he do with his grief and terror? He had faith in God, and he gave himself fully to God, and he thrilled to prove himself faithful to God. Because of Joseph's good choices, God was able to bless him tremendously. Joseph could have rebelled against God, but no, he chose not to. He could have blamed him for all the terrible deeds that had happened to him, but he chose to be faithful to God. Instead, he put all his focus and effort into proving himself faithful to God. We all know how his story ended. He went to Egypt, he was tempted, he was put in prison, but he became the prime minister and was able to save a ton of people from starvation. What if we were faithful to God as Joseph was? This world needs Josephs today. And imagine what we could be accomplishing right now. Friends, we need more Josephs out there, and I want to help accomplish that. I'm going to change tracks a little bit now, and I want to tell you guys my personal story. This is my first time ever doing it in public, so please bear with me. This is new to me as it is to you. So going back to the story in the beginning, I was that little boy. My name was Jacob Joseph Staggs Wright, and I was born in Salem, Oregon, to my parents, Sheila and, my goodness, why am I forgetting it? Sheila and Greg Staggs Wright, thank you. I had 3 half-sisters and 2 half-brothers, and I was the youngest born. And when I was 11 months old, 2 of my sisters and I were taken away out of the home to put in foster care because my mother was having issues with drugs. So at 11 months old, we were placed in a foster family together, and there we lived for like 2 years. When I was 3, we were put back into the custody of our parents. But again, a year later, just more issues, and I was removed again and placed in foster care with my 2 younger half-sisters. And so for the next 2.5 years, my sisters and I moved around to 4 different homes. For 3 of those homes, we were together, thankfully. But the last home, an unfortunate occurrence happened in that I was placed in a different foster home than my 2 sisters. And not only was it like that, but they did it by trickery. They told my sisters I was coming back, and they were content with that. But by a day or 2 later, they realized that we were never to live together again. So for the next 1.5 years, I was in a foster home with a very good family, a Christian family, and I started to have a somewhat normal life. And I was able to visit my sisters, and occasionally with my dad. My mother was in jail. I never visited her but once. So anyways, I grew up in a good Christian home, and I was very grateful for that. But after 1.5 years, I was starting to think maybe this is where I was going to live forever. But God must have had other plans, because I was told when I was almost 7 that I wasn't going to be able to keep living there and that I was going to have to be adopted. So that was really hard for me. I had to accept that. But anyways, my new adoptive parents came out to visit me in Oregon, and we soon grew used to each other, and I was getting excited about moving. So in August 2004, I was adopted by the Edwards family, and I would move back to Tennessee with them. And I was sad for my sisters not to live with me. They were already adopted into another home. But from there on out, I had no more contact with my sisters or my biological family. But anyways, I got situated into the Edwards family, and I started normal life there. I went to school, I had friends and such. And for the next 6 years, I had a relatively good life. And when I got there, everyone at the airport was there to meet me, and my aunt and uncle and cousins were there, and I got really used to and fond to them, and I went often out to visit them at the farm. And I just grew closer and closer to them, and to save time, I don't really want to go into it too much, but we started not having very good, we had started having family issues in the home I was in, the Edwards family, and it became very apparent that I was not going to be able to continue living there. So 2010, I remember pretty clearly, I was at a summer camp, and when I came home, my parents took me out to eat, and they finally broke it to me that it wasn't going to work for me to continue living with them. So once again, another family gone by, and it kind of made me heartbroken. But my aunt and uncle, now mom and dad, the Dysingers, decided that they were going to take me into their home, and that was exciting to me because, like I said, I have been out to the farm a lot and gotten used to being with them, and it was not a hard transition, thankfully. It was probably one of the smoothest I've had. It was a little weird that my cousins were now my brothers and sisters, and my aunt and uncle was my mom and my dad, but what was normal to me back then, So yeah, in 2010, I was readopted by the Dysinger family, and I'm thankful to say I'm still there. So I started to have a more normal life, getting friends, adjusting to my cousins being my siblings. And in 2016, I graduated high school, and I got to a job. And I was really excited because, finally, something normal. I'm getting a job. And so I got into wood flooring. I had an Adventist neighbor that lived right down the road. And so I started working for him, and it was such a great job. I was really enjoying it and starting to make money. And I just wasn't really taking the time to think about, what life is really about and the meaning of life and what we should be doing as Christians. And my parents had mentioned to me a few times about going on a mission trip, but like a long term, a couple months. And I just really wasn't wanting to do it because I wasn't really interested. I wanted to have a job, make money, and stuff like that. So I just kept working. I kind of brushed it aside, but the Lord got to me, and He finally spoke to my heart that I should go on a mission trip. So I decided I was going to go on a TMI mission trip to Romania with my sister and brother-in-law. They do filming for AWR. And so I decided I was going to do that, but the Lord must have had other plans, because one morning when I arrived at work, I got a text message from a friend, and they were going to go to Africa, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to go to Africa with me?" And I was like, 5 months? I don't know about that. I have a job. I don't want to lose my job. So, I said, I'll think about it. And it was originally like 1 month. Can you want to go for 1 month? And I was like, okay, I'll think about that. It sounds doable. But they later texted and said, call me. I have something to tell you. And they called, and they said, we have had some extra fundraising, and all the money for your trip is covered. So I told my parents, and they were very excited. They said, yeah, you should go. This seems like the Lord is opening the door. So I decided I would go for 5 months to Tanzania, Africa. Tanzania, however you say it. So I told my boss I was going to go. He wasn't super happy, but he was understanding. And so I quit my job, believing that when I came back, the Lord would have something else for me to do. And so that was in October 2016. So fast forwarding a few months later, we had plane tickets and left in January to go to Africa. And so I don't know how many of you would know of Kibidula, but it is an Adventist mission post in Tanzania, Africa. And their main mission and goal is to help young high school dropouts get back on their feet and get into agriculture and evangelism. And so I signed up to go as a teacher at the primary school. And when I got there, I did everything but teaching. You know how mission projects can go. But I learned from that to be happy with and to do whatever I could to the glory of God. And I did a lot of painting. I did a lot of brick work, a lot of concrete work. But at the end, I did get some teaching in, so that was cool. So yeah, I went there, and at this time, I had some interest in mission aviation, but I haven't, more or less just the aviation part, I haven't really connected the two before then. But anyways, when I got there, and they had a couple planes there, and it was cool to check them out and stuff. But what really got my interest going is that one time we had the opportunity to go on a mission flight to take someone to the hospital after they had gotten really sick. So I was able to go on that flight and help out with that. And that really got my interest sparked up again into going into aviation. So as I thought more about it, I wasn't so sure yet. I still wanted to get back and go home and work. Anyways, there's a picture. I was always thrilled to be way up high in the clouds. This is arriving at the hospital. It was all a neat experience. But anyways, after the 5 months are up, in June, I went back home. And actually, I got my job back with the wood flooring. That was pretty encouraging. And I kind of got back to work and kind of forgot about mission work. And for the next year, I was just doing my job and wasn't really thinking about getting into mission aviation. I did want to be a pilot, but I wasn't so sure about being overseas. That just really wasn't what I was interested in. But anyways, I kept working. I wasn't really thinking about it. But in June or July, a year ago, last year, my mom found this school called SMAT. And let's see, I got my notes here. And she found this school, and I was like, that sounds interesting. I'll look at it. But after hearing the pricing for the school, I was like, there's no way I'm going to this. It was just way too expensive, and I just thought, well, maybe I'll try to get my pilot training at a local airport. It's much cheaper. But my parents continued to encourage me that the Lord can provide the finances if this is where He wanted me to go. So I signed up and went to school of missionary aviation technology. Sorry, I didn't do that right. And I signed up to go to there. And this is a really neat school. It has some special unique factors about it. Number one, it's mission focused. That's why I decided to go there. But it does a 1-year airframe and power plants course. Normally other places are 2 to 3 years. 1-year commercial pilots course, again, usually done in 2 to 3 years. And it's a Christian mission focused school. So for all of these reasons, my parents and I, we felt this was the best fit for me. And after praying a while, I applied and I went. So I arrived in August last year, and so far we're over halfway done with the program. And it has been a blessing because this is a non-denominational school. And when I first went, I thought there was going to be only one other Adventist there. But this year, there's been the most Adventists they've ever had. We have 6 Adventists at the school right now. So it is a blessing to be able to witness to the other students. We have recently opened up a Bible study that we're studying with other students, and we have, at the most, we had 4 with us a couple weeks ago. So it's a blessing to, Yeah, because this is our mission field right now. So, anyways, school is going good. The pricing for the school A&P course is $23,000 and the flight course is $58,000. This is why I was kind of not so sure about going. But the Lord has really blessed, and my A&P course is almost covered. And I'm getting ready to go to the flight course. I do have a few hang-ups with the flight course. I need to get a flight medical, and that is currently in standby right now. So I would ask your prayers for that. If it's the Lord's will, that I would be getting into the flight course this year, starting in August. And this is my other classmates that are in the A&P course with me right now. It's such a blessing to have other Adventists to live with. So I just wanted to restate the scripture reading. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. Romans 8:28. And I've definitely seen how God has done that for me in my life. And I guarantee that he'll do it for you in your life. Okay, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for this time that I've been able to speak. Lord, I pray that the message that you would have them to hear, that it would have been heard. And Lord, I just pray that you'll continue to bless us for this Sabbath day. In your name I pray, amen.